To save you all from having your subscription feed spammed with individual sports releases, which let's be frank most people these days couldn't care less about, I felt it better to instead group a series of reviews into one video, and so in this video review we will be looking at the NBA In The Zone series, or NBA Pro as it was known in some parts of the world. Developed and published by Konami, it formed part of their XXL Sports series, and on the N64 we were offered 3 games which were 98, 99 and 2000. When NBA In The Zone 98 was released, it was only the second basketball game on the N64, with the first being NBA Hangtime, which as you'll all know is a big arcade title. This release was the first simulation basketball game available. Being first to the table can either be a bonus or a hindrance. On the one hand, you have the entire market of fans who have been waiting for a simulation game who will no doubt want to pick it up. But on the other hand, it's often expected that there will be early developer flaws. Just take a look at FIFA 64 as a prime example for a first generation sports game on N64 to see that it's not always easy to get great results from a new hardware system very early on. Right off the bat though, Konami had the right idea by making the game 4-player, having Rumble Pack support, as well as having full NBA licenses to give it that level of polish anyone picking up a basketball sim would expect. That's probably where the good points end however, because as soon as you jump into the game you'll quickly realise that simply put the game just isn't very fun to play. The biggest problem is that the speed of the game is just far too slow. When you think of the NBA you think of high speed, intensity, superhuman skills and some great plays. NBA In The Zone 98 takes all of that and it seems would rather sit down with a nice cup of tea and have a digestive biscuit. This is compounded by the controls which are far too unresponsive and the AI which is awful. Throw in some terrible ball physics which makes it feel like you are literally tossing a boulder between players, and the fun factor is sapped out of the game from the get-go. Rounding off the package are the blurry visuals which as you can see leave little else for me to talk about, and the low animation level which just makes this look like there's 10 men on a yellow surface having seizures. The audio isn't terrible, the menu music is okay and the commentary is basic, but that was a first generation release and so it is forgivable. I personally hated how much echo the effects have on it, and it made the entire game sound like you're playing trapped inside a cave. I half expected dozens of Chilean miners to show up seeking their freedom. It's just not very good, which is a shame as Konami Sports normally get the audio department spot on. In summary, this year's release is now only for collectors. Anyone else should be avoiding this game, and even in the bargain bin it shouldn't be a pickup apart from anyone who is either a die-hard sports fan or a big NBA fan or really just has too much money. And so with the tricky first entry under their belts, Konami started work on the following year's release. Unlike many sports titles, the game falls into the trap of only making minor updates instead of some major overhauls the series already needed. NBA In The Zone 99 when first booted up may give you a feeling of deja vu. The main menu looks very similar to last year's, but this time they threw in a new game mode which was the 3-point shooting contest. The game still has a full NBA license and Players Association license, and all of these stats and rosters have naturally been updated. The biggest update however is in the game's speed, but don't think this is going to be a problem solver. The speed may have been improved, but with how bad the first game was, that's not asking much. It's still not fast enough for my liking, but it is more tolerable, and combined with the new passing mechanic using icons, it helps to be able to get the ball up court quicker and avoid those misplaced passes which plagued the first title. The AI also appears to have been fine-tuned, but this has led to an imbalance. When making offensive plays, it's much easier to score, but when defending, you'll find that the CPU players will steamroll all over you. You often have a choice of picking up a foul on defense or just letting your opponent score and then getting back into offense where the game is much more fun. Other minor improvements come in the graphics. Things are a little less blurry here, which makes it a little bit easier on your eyes, but it still lacks a level of detail that by the year 99 you were already able to get on other N64 basketball games. I'm not a stickler for graphics, but when the frame rate is so low and the game speed is still not great, there's really no reason why they couldn't have worked more on the visuals. The arenas have a greater level of detail, so perhaps that was more of a focus for them, as they were pretty terrible in NBA In The Zone 98. The music is pretty much the same as last year. There are some acceptable generic sports style music, but it's not going to annoy you when you're playing or spending time in the menu setting up your team or creating your player. Ray Clay also adds his vocal talents to the package and is generally good with some cool delivery of his lines, but you do have the often disjointed delivery when going from a comment to a player's name or number. NBA In The Zone 99 was a definite improvement, but the bar was set so low it would have been pretty impossible to have not made it better than 98. Still, I wouldn't recommend this game also for the same reasons as the 98 release. The third and final game in the NBA In The Zone series on the N64 came in the year 2000, and thankfully Konami appeared to at least do their very best when making improvements. Sadly though, in the year 2000 there were already incredible basketball games on the market, and the NBA Courtside 2 release a few weeks before this on the N64 had already stolen the crown for the best basketball sim. With the bar set so high by Nintendo's own effort, NBA In The Zone 2000 didn't stand much of a chance. On paper the game has everything that you'd expect, such as full stat tracking, new game modes such as the dunk contest, and the ever-present licenses, but in terms of features there was very little added. My hope was that by not adding too many unnecessary game modes, they would have doubled down on some of the flaws that had persisted since the first game. Starting with the animation, and this has perhaps been the biggest upgrade. Players now appear to be more lifelike and move around the court a little more human-like, but it's still not a patch on Kobe Bryant's N64 games. The courts and arenas have more realism too, with some better lighting and more detail to the crowds. It gives the game a better aesthetic, and the speed and frame rate have again been tuned up, but you won't really see much of a difference over the previous year unless you really pay attention. You still have fuzzy looking players which lack a lot of detail, so it's more of an enhancement than previous games. For simulation fans though, the fiddly controls and lack of plays to run makes it feel more akin to a late Super Nintendo title in terms of the depth to the technical aspects of the sport. It's not terrible, but it won't satisfy simulation fans, and those looking for an arcade experience would likely have already got an alternative game that they wanted. The new dunk contest isn't enough to warrant picking this game up, and I still struggle to see why they didn't implement expansion pack compatibility to either bump up the visuals further or at least improve the speed and frame rate of the game. As a whole, the NBA In The Zone series was a bit of a dud on the console. It's a shame because Konami could do sports titles. Just take a look at the International Superstar Soccer series on the N64, which wiped the floor with EA's FIFA series. But they never really seemed to go all out with the NBA In The Zone series and release a basketball game which had the pedigree to make a mark for itself. I could say that all three games in this series are not worth picking up, but if you are going to insist on getting one of them, then 2000 is probably the one to go for. The series had year after year of marginal improvements, but they could have done so much more. When EA released their FIFA series and saw that it was struggling, the N64 release of FIFA 99 had major overhauls to it, and pretty much all elements of the game were improved, which rejuvenated the series. Sadly though, Konami never really felt the same with the In The Zone series. And so for today's topic of conversation, I'd love to know if you ever picked up any of these three titles. Here in England, I always remember seeing NBA Pro Series in bargain bins, sometimes literally for pocket money prices, and still wouldn't be shifted. You could argue that the sport wasn't as popular here, but in the town where I live, basketball was a very popular sport, which many of us were hugely into at the time. As always though, let me know your thoughts, feelings, comments and suggestions, as well as your views on the series in the comments section down below. And until next time.